Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for coming to our webinar. I hope you're all having a great week so far. Our topic today is using Teamstudio Analyzer for your rewrite or migration. My name is Courtney. I'm the marketing manager at Teamstudio. I'm your host today. Brian Arnold is a technical director here at Teamstudio. I'm going to go over some administrative points, then I'll let Brian introduce himself and begin with our topic today. So the administrative points, the attendee list is private. You're all muted, so if you have a question or comment during the webinar, please type it into the chat panel on your GoToMeeting control panel. We've reserved some time at the end of this session for Q&A. If you have any questions, please type them into the chat panel, and Brian and I will read them aloud at the end of the webinar, and Brian will answer verbally. Now, Brian is going to say a few words about his background, experience, and current role, and we'll start talking about how to use Teamstudio Analyzer for your rewrite or migration.
All right, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, call. My name is Brian Arnold. Just so you're aware, I am actually the newest employee at Teamstudio. Been with Teamstudio approximately 2 months, but I have been using the Teamstudio applications in my career for almost 20 years. Started using them in 1998 with one of the very early editions of the Analyzer and Chow applications. So I come with knowledge not from an internal aspect of Teamstudio, but actually externally, more like yourselves. I've been in multiple different roles within Notes environment, been using Notes since actually 1993. So quite a long time in the Notes environment. So today we want to talk about a few different aspects of Analyzer. One of them being just Analyzer in general. We want to also discuss how you can use it for your documentation purposes, performance rewrites of your application, and determining what needs to be done for migration to other technologies as well. So just a quick intro to Analyzer. Not sure how many of you are actually using it or are new to the product. Analyzer itself is an amazing tool to document and index Notes application design and highlight dependencies between your design elements. It can also eliminate the need for time-consuming code reviews within your Domo designer by presenting every aspect of the Notes application in a single place. So the Analyzer application will scan entire Notes applications and present it in its own Notes application where you can do indexing and search throughout every design element in a single interface. Today we want to dive into how you can use Analyzer the Analyzer output to ensure that your Notes applications are adhering to design standards, and how to spotlight possible compatibility problems when considering either a code rewrite to improve performance or to determine complexity of a migration to another platform. So moving on to the next slide. So the Analyzer can be very easily used for your design documentation purposes by using the Analyzer Output application. This application contains every single design element that is within your Notes application in a single easy-to-use interface. This allows you to ship your design documentation to your clients and use it internally for other members of your design team who may not already have access to the application's design itself. In my previous employment, I built not only custom applications for clients, but I also built shrink-wrapped, reusable, redeployable applications. And we actually used the Analyzer Output database as our design documentation that was included with every installation. So next slide. Using Analyzer for your rewrite purposes or looking at server performance, the Analyzer Output can also show you how complex your application is by listing and totaling the different types of design elements. You can also see the complexity of areas within your application which can affect performance, such as the number of views that are used in the application, different references to view names. There are some items in the background of notes that can actually cause performance issues if you're not referencing your views correctly. Number of agents. You can also look at the application's properties and specifically look for performance improvements within the properties. And just look for proper use of various different design elements and design methodologies. For the rewrite purposes, for the migration, so next slide. You can use Analyzer Output to help you in identifying areas of your application that may not conform to or will provide difficulties to convert to a web application or to another platform. So, there's many aspects of a notes application and the design methodologies that are used within Domino Designer that do not migrate easily over to other platforms, such as reader fields, large amount of shared fields, which many other platforms don't have that methodology, referencing DLLs or other using web technologies, but not in a web aspect, like using Java applets or JavaScript within Notes. Although those are web technologies, they may not convert as easily when you're doing your migration. Also, we do have the Analyzer Auditor, which can easily locate and display to you what areas of your application will be causing problems. And those are pre-configured and shipped along with Analyzer as well. So enough with the slides. We're going to switch over to the demo now. So I'm going to now display my screen. So this is my notes environment. I've simplified the look and feel just for today's demonstration. So I want to quickly just go into the Analyzer database just to show you what it actually captures and how you can navigate around it for your design documentation purposes initially. So I've created quite a few different Analyzer Output databases. The way Analyzer works is you can have a single analysis database per application, or you can also use a singular Analyzer Output database to capture the design of all your applications. It all depends on how you want to ship this to your internal people or external clients. So I'm just going to open up one of them here. This is a simple application that was made many years ago. But instead of having to search through each of the design elements within Domino Designer, I can now see everything about the application in a single place. So I can see everything about views, profile documents, forms, everything I want. There are many different views that are available to you as well, which give you more information about each different type of design element. So you're not just looking at a high level, which is in this view. If I wanted to look at forms and a little bit more detail about the forms, I can just easily navigate to a form view, which just displays me anything about the forms. There's multiple different ways of looking at these as well, and you can break it down into the individual design elements on the form as well, such as actions, buttons, views, frames, frame sets. Every aspect of your design is within this single database. And I do not have to have my Domino Designer running at all to see the design elements. Going into each one of these documents, each one displays different information about the type of design element, and it brings in the actual code itself. So you can actually see the code and distribute this to your other design team. For performance rewrites, for server performance, it's very easy to search through the application looking for certain aspects that can cause performance issues within your applications. So I'm going to open up a different one here. And this one you can see I've scanned 5 databases in this case. And I can very quickly see which ones are more complex and which ones are simpler. Just by simply looking at this initial view, I can tell there's quite a few design elements within this contacts database, over 21,000 different design aspects, whereas a simpler one only has 73. So it's very easy and quick to see which ones are more complex. The way I tend to use Analyzer is I use the full text index, full text searching, to perform various different searches to determine what areas of the application are going to have different performance issues. So there's a lot of different aspects that you can look for. Certain things like looking for the application properties, just to see if it is performing as well as it can. You can very easily look at the high level of the database. Within this area, you can see the general options. There is an extra area here on the side where you can see all of the different general options for the database. And there are quite a few that affect server performance and application performance, such as when images are loaded, whether or not you're maintaining unread marks, whether you're optimizing the document table map, maintaining last access properties of the database. A lot of these can affect performance. So you can very easily determine which ones are enabled and which ones are not. Also, you can then search through your code for certain areas to see whether they're being used most optimally. If you're looking for certain things in LotusScript, one aspect, if you're dealing with front-end documents within LotusScript, one aspect, especially if you're writing a lot of fields to the front-end document, is auto reload. Some people use this, some do not. It's actually very useful and makes a huge performance improvement if you are using it correctly. And what I mean by correctly is, if I look here, although it's in use, I can very quickly see and determine that it's not being used correctly. So the proper way to use this would be to set it to false before you even start looking at your front-end document, and then set it back to true afterwards, and then it will reload the document. So this is an area that I can very quickly see that I can do some performance improvements here just by changing the code slightly. Another one would also be auto update on a view. If it's not being used correctly, when you're navigating through documents, it will actually cause a lot of performance problems. So this is a good example of where it has been used correctly, where we're setting it to false at the beginning and true at the end. That way, if you are navigating through documents, you get a snapshot of what's in the view index instead of it updating the view index while you're navigating through all the documents in the code. So you can easily go through and look at all of the design to see where it's being used incorrectly or correctly. Other aspects that can affect performance in an application is the overuse of certain shared elements. Using too many shared fields or having too many subforms on a single form can drastically decrease performance in an application. So I can very easily look through this and see how many shared fields there are. There's 8. That's not overly abundant. How many subforms there are. There are quite a few, 16 with a lot of fields on them, and other shared elements like shared actions. Using again the search, you can look for various different performance aspects of formula language that do cause a lot of performance problems. Some in views are things like at now or at today. If you're using those in a view, it can drastically decrease the performance of your views. So I can very quickly see where those are being used and highlight those for possible rewrite. The Analyzer output can also assist in locating areas of your code that have dependencies on other elements. This is very good for if you're looking to decrease the amount of views that you have, but you're not sure where some of your hidden views are being referenced in the code. You know, a lot of people use DB lookup or DB column to gain information from other documents, but if you're looking to do a view review or review of all of your hidden views, you need to know where they're being referenced. So you can very easily, you know, look at forms and see forms or subforms and see what is being used on there. You know, so I can see where shared actions are being used, where subforms are being used, and where they're being used too often. So here I can see that this form references 2 views and a shared action. So I can then go in here and see what is being used and where. You can also use it to see where applications are possibly referencing your server. This is especially important if you are intending on migrating from one Domino server to another. Good coding practice should be that you don't reference the server by its name anywhere in the code. Rather, you reference it just using formula language to dynamically find the server name. But there are some people who have specifically or implicitly listed the server name in the code. So I can very quickly look up the name of the server, not in this one, and determine whether or not it is in use. And if it is, then I can resolve that issue very quickly. And identify where it's being used. You can, as I mentioned, the view columns, you can also determine where other script libraries are being used, or if a script library is no longer being used. So you may have old design in your application that is, you know, giving you bottlenecks or causing issues, possibly with the compiler, and it may not ever be used. So you can very quickly and easily find that out within here as well. All right, so moving on to web migration. The Analyzer output, as I mentioned, can easily help you identify areas of your application that do not conform or will provide some difficulty converting to a web application. And again, using the search tools within Notes itself, you can determine where certain aspects are already being used. So if I type in Java, I can find out very quickly where Java is being already used within an application and determine whether it can be migrated over to the web or if it needs to have a rewrite. So I can see here, you know, there's some Java code. This is actually JavaScript, so I can determine, you know, whether this is reusable in itself or if it needs to be rewritten itself. If you're distributing this to other teams, you can also do a full search. And what I've done within the Analyzer output application, I've already made, I always make a very quick tweak to it. So I can create folders that I can then reference in the future, and then I can distribute the Analyzer output application and have various people on my team review certain aspects of the code. So if I know I have Java or JavaScript experts and I want to migrate this to the web, I can very easily, you know, locate anything that references Java dot. Then I can create a folder. I can actions, move to folder. I already have one for JavaScript. I'm going to create a new folder just for Java. And I'm going to move those into the Java references. And this way I can later on go back and take a look at everything that has any kind of Java code in it. And then when I distribute this to the developer team, I can earmark certain people to look at the JavaScript code or the Java references or any other aspects that may cause issues within an application. So another very quick one that will not work on the web is any calls to DLLs. So I can see here there's quite a few. There's 167 calls to DLLs, mainly to export Excel, and that's not going to convert over to the web very well. You can't rely on the fact that they have a Windows machine. I actually use a MacBook for my primary machine, so I know those are not going to work on a MacBook. And again, I can easily put those into a folder. I'm going to create a new folder again and add those to the folder. So now I can easily send this off to somebody and have them review whether or not these are going to work on the web. In many cases, you can see this is some progress bar code, but it is referencing local DLLs. So I know this is not going to work on the web. You can also use what are called audit filters within the Analyzer database itself. These are, again, a set of preset filters that we ship along with Analyzer that will highlight certain areas of an application that will give you possible issues with standardization. So there's a few here: accessibility standards, UI standards, and web standards. The web ones are items that we know in our experience that can cause issues when migrating to a web application. Similarly with UI standards, you may have certain standards within your organization that you need all of your applications to adhere to. So then you can scan your applications to ensure that people are using the correct fonts or font size or color schemes within your applications. If you do have applications that require accessibility standards for ADA, or in Canada, the equivalents throughout the provinces. I'm personally from Canada, so I know within the province of Ontario, there is very extensive accessibility standards in place called the AODA, very similar to the American ADA. And my previous applications had to adhere to these standards in order to be distributed worldwide. So you can use these when you're doing your analysis and determine where areas of your application will have problems. It's a very simple process. Just by opening any of these applications, when I start my analysis, you're presented with the Teamstudio Analyzer dialog. This gives you the ability to determine where the analysis output will go, whether it be on a server if you're sharing it between your team, or you can have it on your local. But there is a tab called Audit. And in here, this is where you would select one of those filters. So right now I have web standards selected, but you can see this is the same list that was just I was just showing to you. And this will go through the design after it's been scanned to determine whether it meets or does not conform to the selected filter. I've already run these, so I'm going to go right into the audit output. So from within here, again, I've done something very similar to what I did with the analysis, and I placed it all into a single report database, Auditor report database. And you can see here that there are quite a few applications that I have scanned, 16 in total. And from here, I've also done multiple audit scans. So I can see I previously worked on a very complex notes-based CRM application. It was comprised of 18 different databases, and it needed to not only conform to UI standards, but also accessibility standards for shipping to clients within Canada and anywhere in North America. So we had used this many times in the past just to determine whether or not we were conforming to standards. So for the main CRM application, I can see there's some that do not conform. A better way to look at this is going by class, and then it breaks it down by the different audit filters that I applied. So I can see right here, I have some UI standards that need to be adjusted. I also have some, if I wanted to convert this over to the web, there's quite a few areas and aspects of the application that will cause issues during conversion. And I can very quickly and easily go in here and see what these are. Most of them do have to deal with complex tables within an application. Converting that over to web technology and web standards can be very complex. So prior to doing any conversion, either manually or with the various tools that are on the market now, this is an area that would need to be adjusted prior to any kind of conversion. And similarly, I can see UI standards just to ensure that I am conforming to the UI standards that are on the market right now. And many of them are not high priority. You can also make your own Analyzer audit filters as well. I've done this in the past, especially if I want to determine whether certain fonts and font sizes are being used within the application. These are very easily created within the Analyzer filters database. Simply by creating a filter, you can say where it needs to be applied or multiple places for it to be applied. I can say UI standards. I can say whether it's low, medium, or high severity, and I can determine where I want to apply it to. Within this area, I can literally make a filter for any design element and any aspect of a design element I want. So I can say fields. I want to make sure that one of the properties, and this would be the font property, font style, or sorry, font face. No, sorry, I did want to use font style. And I can say, whether I want it to be bold, italic, plain. So if I want to ensure all my fields have not been placed in bold. I can add that condition, and then the next time I do an Analyzer scan, it's going to tell me if there are any fields that are not plain. So save that, and then I can rerun an analysis on a database. I'll go into my project and time tracking again. And the next time I run this, if I do UI standards once again, it will give me a listing of anywhere within the application in the audit reports where font or fields have been placed in bold. So then I can go in and make sure it is complying to my own company's UI standards. Right. That is the end of the demo. I'll open it up for questions now.
Great presentation, Brian. Your real-world experience with Analyzer is very interesting.
Thank you.
Okay, cool. So just a reminder for the attendees, please type your questions into the chat panel if you do have a question. While you are thinking of that, let me just switch the presentation back to me so you can see this little slide. There we go. Okay, so while you are thinking of your questions and typing them in, I want to mention that we'll be at MWLUG in Washington, D.C. next month. So if you're planning to be there, please stop by our booth. Okay, so right now it doesn't look like we have any questions. But if you think of a question afterwards, I will share my email with you here in the chat. You should have that now. So if you do think of a question afterwards, there's my email address, so please reach out to us anytime. If you'd like to see any aspect of Analyzer in more detail, please contact us through my email or through our website, and we'd be very happy to help. Okay, so with that, thank you very much for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you again very soon.